I'm going to talk to you about a Filecoin improvement proposal that's currently open, FIP 76, if I recall correctly. The sort of pretty name for it is direct data onboarding. I can click now, right? Yeah, cool. That hopefully will land soon. The twin goals of this change. The first immediately motivating sort of direction for it is to reduce the gas costs of putting data into sectors. So, putting data into sectors is the core functionality that Filecoin offers, and proving that data was put there and is still there. And the second sort of goal direction for it is to establish the foundations for us to be able to have smart contracts act as on-chain that implement storage-related things. A storage market is the one thing that is sort of the most obvious, straightforward kind of application that might exist. But this can extend to any kind of data application that's interacting directly with the storage providers and the data that they put into sectors. So your data DAOs, bounded contracts, any kind of thing brokering or needing to know that data has been put into a sector. So related to the gas costs, it also increases the network's capacity to onboard data. The network has a finite capacity today to seal data into sectors, bounded by the gas cost of doing the transactions. That capacity is not that much higher than where we are. So in order to grow a lot, we need to make changes like this and more in the future that enable us to put more data in more sectors with inside a fixed computational cost. So how it does this, it allows SPs to commit data into a sector without requiring a deal in the built-in market actor. The built-in storage market actor currently has the thing that's called a deal. It's the deal proposal message with signatures. And in Filecoin today, the only way that an SP is permitted to put any data into any sector is to have a deal with the storage, with the built-in storage market. They can make that deal with themselves. There's no need for there to be a real client on the other end of it, but they have to have the overhead of putting that chain state in. Chain state is expensive. So in brief, what this change means is there's no need to publish a storage deal unless you want the functionality that the built-in market offers. The one thing that it offers is on-chain payments. Any deal that isn't using on-chain payments doesn't need to use a storage deal. Clients can still use Fill Plus. Everything here still works with Fill Plus. However, when going direct, as it were, if you don't need client payments, when going direct, the Fill Plus allocation record needs to be created directly, whereas in today, the built-in market actor creates that on your behalf as part of publishing a storage deal. Creating Fill Plus allocation is much cheaper than publishing a storage deal. It's like 15% or something of the cost of deal publication. Okay, so now there's these two. So when data is being put into a sector, there are three independent things that can happen. Firstly, there's at the sector level, there's the data commitment to the sector, the ComD, which may be made up of multiple pieces. Then there may or may not be the ID of a Fill Plus allocation that's associated with that same piece of data. And there may or may not be the ID of a deal in the built-in storage market actor. The data CD obviously has to exist. The other two are optional and don't depend on each other. And so this means that the parties together are paying gas for the functionality that they need, and they're not paying gas for the functionality that they don't need. So if you're not doing Fill Plus, you don't pay for any Fill Plus overheads. If you're not doing client payments, don't pay for any deal overheads. But you can. All of the existing workflows keep working the same. If you want to use the built-in storage market, you still can, and everything that's built today will keep working. But if in order to take advantage of the new direct path, then the way that the parties interact with the blockchain changes, and so new external tooling does need to change to take advantage of the new methods. Impact. So primary impact here, reduce the gas cost of data onboarding. So in the very common case of a Fill Plus verified data, but with no client payments, the gas cost will be reduced by 65%, so 35% remaining gas cost compared with the network today. In fact, that could possibly be a bit higher because there's other optimizations that are going to land in the network soon as well. without doing a deal and without doing Fill Plus, it's 85% cheaper. So the true underlying cost of just getting the data into the sector is only 15% of the current gas costs is necessary. This also has an effect if you're not doing a deal with the built-in market actor. It also means that the data is not subject to the mandatory deal collateral minimum that the built-in market actor enforces. If you're doing Fill Plus, this is a relatively small part for the SP of collateral. If you're not doing Fill Plus, this is a relatively large part of an SP's sort of total tokens they require.
This is different than the pledge collateral, right? This is just
this is in addition to pledge collateral today. Pledge collateral is much bigger in the case of Fill Plus, but is not that much bigger in the case of non-Fill Plus.
The deal collateral you are mentioning here is what we usually call the provider collateral when we receive a deal.
Yes,
the provider collateral, one which is coming from the clients, expected from the client.
Sorry, could you say that again?
That's the value that is expecting from the client. We have in the proposal when we receive the proposal.
Yeah, a deal proposal specifies an amount of provider collateral.
Provider collateral. Okay, that's the one here.
Yeah.
It's non-zero, so you're forced to put some.
Yep.
Yeah, today you're not allowed to put that to zero. But if you're not doing a deal at all, then there's no way to specify that number. So it's implicitly zero. Okay, another impact is how the chain state looks after this. So if you're not doing a deal with the built-in market, then there is no deal proposal, there is no deal state on chain. So explorers and tools and client and provider tools that are trying to understand what data is in each sector and what does it mean, need to look in the appropriate place to understand the appropriate properties of that data. So earlier on I mentioned there'll always be some data. There may or may not be a Fill Plus ID. There may or may not be a deal ID. Similarly, there may or may not, in the state afterwards, may or may not be a deal, depending on whether there was a deal ID, and there may or may not be a verified data claim in the verified registry state, depending on whether this was Fill Plus data. So there is the source of truth for verified data for the Filecoin chain state is the verified registry actor's state. Today, for any piece of verified data, there is also a deal, because you must have a deal to put any data in a sector. After this change, there can be a verified record with no deal because there's no client payments. So if you want to understand what verified data is, and the verified registry actor state includes most of the things you want to know. It includes the client, it includes the term, it includes the piece CID and size, the provider. It's got all the stuff except how much does the client have to pay, because this is not a deal with payment. But you have to look there instead of looking in the built-in market state. Today, before this change, inside the miner actor, each sector has a list of deal IDs that sector is hosting, so that the mapping from sector to deal is inside the miner actor. After this change, inside the market actor, there's a mapping that goes the other way from deal ID to sector ID. So it's actually much more direct. If what you want to know is where is my data, you can look in the look directly up into a mapping into the market state if you've got a built-in market deal. I don't think I mentioned the verified data state also includes the sector ID that's hosting the verified data. So again, this is directly, you go from the verified claim ID, you can immediately look up the sector, the provider in the sector that's hosting that data. Right, but as a result of this, the built-in market actor will not account for every piece of data in every sector. It will only account for data where the parties may publish a storage deal, signed and published a storage deal. And the only reason to do that is number one, you haven't updated your tooling yet and you're still using the old way for whatever reason. Or number two, you want a client payment, and so you want the facility for on-chain payments. And so the built-in market actor will only account for deals that have those payments. In the future, other contracts that are functioning as markets or data DAOs or whatever will have their own records about the payment terms or whatever is relevant to their thing. Question.
So today we often use deal tracking as an indicator of adoption of the Filecoin storage services that exist, right? We take this almost as a KPI for the network success. This makes it a little bit harder to put together something as basic, because theoretically we now have to chase down for verified deals we can get something, for stuff going to the market actor we can get something and find the diff there and get the superset. for people that choose not to use a market actor but are still storing data in these sectors, is there a deterministic on-chain way to identify that, hey, this sector has some kind of deal data in it versus it just being like a COMD of a CC sector, or no?
So you can certainly tell the difference between CC sectors and deal sectors. There's no lookup for that right now, but it's in chain state. There's just no method that smart contracts can call to look it up.
But we could theoretically have an oracle that would do that. That would scan every sector as COMD. Okay.
Yeah. So we can absolutely tell which sectors have data in them and which do not.
We've got a couple of hands here to follow up. I have one mic at the moment. Reba.
Yeah, Alex, thanks for the summary. I actually wasn't aware that we are going to switch the deal to sector mapping, which is super important because it also allows liveness checks without an oracle. So today, to see if a particular sector is faulted or not, you need to have an oracle. You cannot do it without knowing that. With this, you can literally do it from a smart contract. So this is awesome.
No, this is only Alex.
Yeah, sorry, Peter, thanks you very much. Can you send me a message on some channel? We should put an API method on the market to be able to look up this state, because it's in the state, but it's not accessible in the current implementation.
We don't really need for smart contract. Yeah, we will need an API. I want to answer Deep's question. Like, depend on what you consider on chain, because like even with the DDO pipeline, all the information you're looking for, like the P size or the P's comp, like the information are in the message parameters, so you can build observable oracles to still abstract those like message as they are sent to the chain. Yeah, you can literally get the PC information still.
I think, I don't think that was a question for, so right now, Alex, you're representing that the one thing that the built-in market does today is payments. And I think that's that's missing a really important function, which is it allows you to look inside of Filecoin and pull out data in the future based on where that data has been stored. Like a lot of people have built like deal explorers that fetch that data, and that has been a critical function that the market has been doing for us, and deals in general have been doing for us, is that some other party someday in the future can go and be like, cool, a deal was made for this chunk of data, and now I'm going to know where to grab it and fetch it, and we can build explorers over that, and people can make retrieval requests based on that. And that's like super core to like what we're trying to deliver as a network of making sure that data gets stored and data gets retrieved and people actually gain value from Filecoin as a decentralized storage market. So in this new model, I think we need to reframe the verified registry or something inside of Filecoin, which is your baseline like storage mapping. Maybe you don't want to call it a deal because that'd be confusing, because we've had deals in the past and technically the verified registry is not a deal per se, but we need some baseline primitive that is there and embedded in the network so that people can go and find what data was stored by who, where, and who can get it back out later in the future, and that the verified registry implements that, the built-in storage market implements that, future client storage markets should implement that as well. But like that needs to be a core part of Filecoin. Otherwise, we're not doing what we need to do as a network. We're not enabling people to figure out what data was stored and get it back out.
There are two different approaches to that. For explorers, which I think you mentioned first, explorers and external tooling can build exactly that index by inspecting the message history of sectors being committed to the network. So every onboarding will include a breakdown of the data that was committed into that sector, possibly a breakdown of that data into multiple pieces if it was satisfying different deals in different markets or there was different fill plus allocations being claimed. I don't think that's particularly common these days. It's usually 32 gigs at a time, but if it is broken down, that'll all be there. So in terms of someone coming along later and inspecting the blockchain to know that, that is possible from the message history. It will not, I don't think it's generally possible for us to put that inside the chain state, meaning that index, that metadata is in chain state, and grow the network, because processing that state consumes gas. And so just writing that index consumes gas. Writing that index today consumes a large part of our gas. And so we can't have 10, 100,000, million times more deals on the network and maintain that index in change state on mainnet. As soon as we sort of talk about breaking this up, sharding this, it can go into that kind of stuff can go into subnets. Subnets will have a much cheaper consensus, much cheaper state. It can absolutely go there. But there's a sort of fundamental limitation on putting arbitrary size data into the chain state itself.
Yeah, I recognize the downside with that, obviously, is that creating external indexes and explorers and other public good services for the network that are then trying to parse and hold on to all of this message data and make it accessible to other folks, that's overhead. That's an additional service or application or something that either needs to have a business model or someone needs to be funding it. And everyone, now relies on that outside of network tooling in order to make the network useful. And that's a risk for the network's utility because now we're dependent on some external service. And if it goes down, shit, now we no longer have an index of what data was stored where. You as clients are dependent on that. So we're taking something that right now Filecoin does and a service it provides, and now we're making it dependent on some other service appearing and hopefully maintaining it. And I know right now the Sentinel team, it's non-trivial for the work that they're doing, trying to parse all this data and make it accessible to folks.
Use cases. So you effectively have the Sentinel team or the Oracle that we operate that parses chain state, puts it behind something, whether it's a Postgres DB or an API that is off chain. Then these services come and read that thing. So we're just increasing the complexity of that, but we're not introducing a new type of service.
It's making their service more complicated to build because all they do is monitoring on-chain state. It's new pipeline. They have to add a specific. Yeah.
Yeah. Look,
I feel
I wouldn't claim that it's simpler having it off chain. It's a cost. It's not. If chain state was free, then we'd put it on chain. But
yeah. And I think
but it's not.
If eventually we enable actor events so that we can actually have notification or traceable information when something happened in chain, we trigger event, then those toolings can actually just observe, subscribe to those events and filtering as they need. That could be one of the solution we should consider. And
that's pretty much equivalent to looking at the messages, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to double down on that there is no scenario in which the data is just lost. All these off-chain caches effectively are rebuildable from the current state and the message history. Yes, it is relatively expensive, but maintaining such a cache is extremely low cost. So I don't see this as a blocking thing.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of persisting that data, happily we have a solution to persisting data for the long term. It's perfectly reasonable to go put the message history back into a Filecoin sector, and then with a few more API changes that we need in order to be able to access data inside a sector from a smart contract, we could then have this oracle back into the chain history on chain. Yeah, so in the future, this change doesn't yet. It's 80% of the way to enabling user-programmed actors, user-programmed smart contracts to function as storage markets. Any storage market that someone writes can have such a mapping within it. I expect that any storage markets that do maintain on-chain indexes like that will be more expensive to use than ones that don't, and so they'll tend not to be used. But for users who care about that, it's totally possible that they'll just have to pay for it. Question?
Do you see a way for user programmable markets without it?
Let me think.
Without relying on a two-tier structure?
Well, I mean, mostly no. So by user programmable markets, I mostly mean some other smart contract taking the place of the built-in market actor, and therefore being able to implement some different semantics, some different deal contract terms, some different functionality like renewing or bigger than sector deals, all those kind of features. Some of those things can be built by just layering on top of the built-in market, and you pay a cost which I've mentioned, but it's possible. Some of those things just cannot be built by layering on top of the built-in market. You need the direct sector access to build them. Jen?
My question is somewhat related from the previous one slide up, like previous slide, another one, when we talk about like client message here, because this is the data onboarding track. I assume we have some client actually, or like the people who are building client tooling in the room. I'm wondering how does the second point impact your application, and is it a bottleneck which we are introducing a message for verified data for data client who wants to leverage Filecoin Plus, like they have to send a message on chain to actually allocate data cap. I'm wondering whether this is a problem for you all, if like say a node loaders or the toolings just expose the API for you guys to do that. Is that good enough? Or we have to figure some way to delegate that operation to storage provider also?
Yeah.
Alex, can you very quickly recap the difference between how the system works today with the published storage deal message related to the fill plus allocation and how the new system works?
Yep, yeah, thanks. I was just about to. So today, a client creates a deal proposal locally, signs it locally, sends it out of band, like no blockchain, to the storage provider. The storage provider publishes the message onto the blockchain. The storage provider pays gas, for a lot of gas, for publishing that message. And that's how the deal gets, and then that gives the SP permission to now seal the sector with that data. In this new flow, with Fill Plus, a client who has a data cap balance will submit a message on chain from the client to spend that data cap on this data with this provider under these, for this duration. So a difference from the current scheme is that the client sends a message, the client needs to pay gas for that operation. And the SP doesn't need to do anything until they commit their sector. So it's a change in the workflow. It's an overall reduction in costs, but there's also a change in who pays those costs. But when you say you don't have to use the new way, everyone can still keep using the old way. There's no near-term plans to make the old way not functional, but to take advantage of the cost reduction, changes are needed.
So when the deal fails on the provider side, the data get lost? In the old situation when SP proposes, DP proposes, and SP tries to seal, and the published message does not arrive on chain, the data cap is not used. In this new situation, when the client proposes the deal, the data cap immediately get used, despite of what the SP is going to do with it.
Right.
So when there's a failure, it's lost.
Yeah, sure. Data cap allocations have an expiration date. It's very similar to like the deal start date, and under the hood, this is how deals refund the data cap as well. So when Fill Plus allocation is made by a client, it specifies an epoch by which the data must be on chain. Otherwise, the data cap is given back.
So why
You
not?
don't lose it. It's given back. Just the gas.
Yeah, the new thing is that the client now needs. Yes, in a way, like I don't know if this is a gross oversimplification, but it feels like gas cost on the SP side goes down substantially, but on the other hand, traceability of market state complexity goes up. So like Oracle building complexity goes up. So off-chain costs for operators of that type of service go up.
Yep.
And client addresses or client address proxies now need fill balance to be able to pay gas, which is something that didn't exist before. Because you could stand up a wallet with zero fill, just go get data cap in, right? So that's so client UX gets slightly worse. Operator UX gets slightly worse, but net costs for the entire onboarding experience go down and chain scalability goes up.
Yep,
Is that too gross of an oversimplification?
it's accurate.
Okay. It's is it though? Because SPs will have enough leverage to then just force everybody to. I don't know if that's
I will
optional.
repeat like what Steph said. When there are cheaper options for storage providers, we are forcing the storage provider to just taking that options, and that's the only use case like pipeline they will be serving. Why not, to answer your question, it's like now we're basically making the data cap allocation and the claim process more explicit. So you make the allocations and storage provider can claim the data cap, and the claim is when you proved commit the sectors. If you failed once, as long as the allocation is still valid on chain, you can try to claim that again, and that's okay, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, Jennifer, I think it's vice versa. Storage providers are going to force clients to abide by this new system, regardless of whether or not clients want to, not the other way around. Like, as we already see today, storage providers have exerted the influence of what is cost effective in this market. You know, those are unintentional incentives, right? But it's based on what right now the protocol makes easy and makes low cost, have exerted the influence of, hey, we're only going to take a deal that's the size of a sector. Filecoin does not mandate that. Filecoin really, I mean, clients would much prefer to just make deals the size of the data that they want, of the data they have. However, Filecoin, like, because people want the published storage deal to be one per sector and they don't want to incur any additional fees, that causes this really awkward overhead for everyone involved because that is the lowest cost avenue. And so the new lowest cost avenue will be this new flow, which will mean that pretty much if you want to engage as a client, like 99% of the time, you're going to have to follow this new flow because that's what's going to be incentivized in the system. And so we just need to be really careful of the incentives we set and how they're going to change the client experience of using Filecoin.
Let me say 2 more questions so we can go and have lunch before it's all gone.
Yeah, my question was going to be, it seems like this is still a very much in progress discussion around whether this is the right approach or how it's going to move forward. And so if we want to keep up to date with this discussion, is there an existing FIP about it already? And if so, what's the number?
It's FIP 76, and there's a FIP discussion forum thread, which is the right place to ask those questions. Yeah, there's a Slack channel too. That's more for the development coordination. But,
I guess, like, in the grand scheme of things, clients are still the bottleneck, right? Like, new clients are still the bottleneck. So I think we should do a decent amount of more client research on whether the UX and kind of new flows for the clients are going to be prohibitive or, create more friction than it's worth at this time in the network's maturity. Like, I'm not debating that this would be, like, really useful at some point, but we're still struggling, and I'm looking to, like, the network growth team and Jen and Stefan and others to maybe lead some of this research. Like, we're still having to educate clients on a whole bunch of different things just to get them to, kind of come to the table, and adding kind of like a differential UX here that makes it more painful for them. It might not be, like, the right time for this, or, like, I want to assess, like, whether that's how much more friction that's going to introduce in the system.
Yeah, I'm coming to you.
Clients are already having a painful experience. So this is I would argue that this is not necessarily more painful. It's shifting the pain. So if this is the direction we are going in, because that's what makes sense for the network, then the task is on us as a community, partly PL, partly other involved engineers, to develop the tooling for how to simplify the client experience of getting fill plus allocation done. Yeah, I understand that. The point is, like, today when I talk to Triton about onboarding their data, Triton says me, like, what is this fill plus application that I need to do? And then the fill plus bot randomly closes the issue, and someone has to comment saying, keep it open. Like that, it's already a very painful experience. So this is shifting the pain.
You would also argue what Molly was saying, that, like, we should have on-chain paid deals. In that case, client also need to have Phil wallet and hold, like, Phil. So, like, the pain is not, like, extra just for sending a new message. And this is, like, I agree with Andrew, it's, like, can be solved by the tooling. I do want to mention, if the client doesn't want to deal with this, after they have the data cap allocation, they can delegate this operation to a trusted party like on-chain, so they can say, this can be my operator for my data cap, and then that operator can send and transfer data cap and making allocations on the client's behalf. So that's already possible on-chain, and we just need, like, on-ramps to actually adopt that flow.
So you're still right, though, because, like, the willingness for a client to go and buy filled right now, like, we're having to get people to drag their feet, right, in certain use cases where we just don't have the ability to serve that need. And so you're definitely adding friction. I think the part that we're not talking about is where we're reducing friction. We had Arkady in here before, Ian's in the room. The most painful thing that some of our really big use cases that we know are already working are currently experiencing is that it's too expensive for SPs. And so the SPs are moving extremely slow. That is the biggest pain point I hear about. So I'm biased by that. This helps with that. And so in a way, I'm interested in seeing what the trade-off there looks like, which is like, hey, would people actually move faster if we cut their gas costs down by like 70%? Maybe yes. Would that outweigh then the need for like doing the work to proxy and stand up like a wallet that then sends to the chain a message for the data cap allocation? Also then maybe yes. Very hard to assess in a meeting room, but like a thought that I think is worth like trading off the opportunity cost for. Yeah. Sure. That could work.
I have like one question.
Thanks, Jen, for pointing out that data cap already has a delegation mechanism, and so yes, any data cap holder can delegate. Unfortunately, you need Phil to make that one delegation message. Someone.
But you also need that implemented in Lotus, which you don't have after 45
We do. Stop saying that.
Okay. There is also future work can be done to change this workflow. We can do more complexity on-chain in order to reduce the off-chain complexity. That's normally the opposite direction to our design intent, but we can add an equivalent. We can add a data cap voucher thing, some mechanism where the client signs an off-chain message, sends it via a side channel, and then the SP publishes it. It's just a way to get someone else to pay gas. We can implement that. It's extra complexity. Would prefer to wait for a demand for that to emerge before we add the complexity on chain, but we can also change that workflow.
There's one question I really want to leverage the audience in this room to ask. So on the DDO flow, I am assuming not everyone is going to use Filecoin Plus, because that already we know has all the information that people are using today. However, if you are not using Filecoin Plus, or you are just using DDO without making F05, we are not actually enforced for you to have a client address in the piece manifest you will be sending along with the message. I am curious to search providers and also the client tooling, how much does the client care about wallet, the address that's storing the piece on chain? Do they care about that at all, or they only care about that piece on chain? No, they don't care. Great.
Sorry, can I just put in the two answers? Because we are recording all of this. This is a really important discussion. We are actively talking about these things. The people who happen to be here in the room here in Iceland aren't the only people who are going to care about the answers to these questions. We're going to keep debating this. So, it's good. The question was, do people currently care about wallet IDs? Deep was saying, not today. There are some abuse cases where you're trying to, include that information so that you can mitigate abuse. And then Andra was saying that there might be tooling in the future that relies on that information that hasn't yet been designed. For example, hey, what are all of the deals that I've made from this wallet ID? And really useful things that might utilize that information that just don't exist today. Oh, sorry, Julian had a hand as well.
No, let me cut it off there. I'll be happy to answer more questions when both of us are holding a plate of food.